New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
New Thought Media Network is excited to present Divine Science Everywhere, Fridays at 2 p.m. Mountain Time and 4 p.m. Eastern. Come explore a modern experience of divine science with Reverend Joy Fletcher, Reverend Jeff Radcliffe, and Bishop Durrell Watkins. Join us as we open our eyes to divine science everywhere we look. Fridays on New Thought Media Network.
Welcome to Divine Science Everywhere on New Thought Media Network. Divine Science Everywhere features divine science ministers and New Thought guests, and we discuss divine science principles and practice. I'm Reverend Joy Fletcher, and currently I am serving as the president of Divine Science Ministers Association. And I also express my ministry in other ways, including grief support and a death doula, and I am a ritualist. So also with me today is Bishop Durrell Watkins, a senior minister of Sunshine Cathedral and the president of Divine Science Federation International. So we like to begin the hour with a centering moment. So let's take a few moments and become still. Let's take a moment to breathe in deeply and gently exhale, allowing the awareness of spirit to fill this space, this time, this moment in your heart. We are immersed in divine essence. We are in the presence of omnipresence. We are dwelling in omnipresence. This is true for me, you, and everyone else. In this moment, let's call forth this recognition, this presence, in which we live and move and have our being. As we are reminded in Jeremiah 23:24, do I not fill heaven and earth? This omnipresence is equally present everywhere. This omnipresence is peace, power, life, love, wisdom, grace, hope. Even when we seem to experience the challenges of day-to-day living, we are immersed in this energy, in this omnipresence. As in Psalm 139, verse 8, if I make my bed in hell or Sheol, behold, thou art there. We can never, ever be away from this presence, except in our minds. And in truth, we are not separate from this presence. Omnipresence means there's no place where God is not. There is no distance, no barrier, no hiding from the presence that is infinite love and infinite good and infinite peace. So let us now accept and recognize the awareness of this omnipresence right here, right now. Perhaps say to yourself, I am resolved to see in every place, every time, every circumstance, and every condition only one presence, only one power, and only one life. I know this presence is, and I now decide to open my awareness to this good only, to think good only, to see good only in every person and in everything I see. God, the divine, is the good. And this God, this divine, is omnipresent. There's nothing outside this presence, this infinite light, infinite love, and infinite wisdom. Let us bring to mind any challenges you might have, any loved ones, dear ones that you may be concerned about, any appearance of discord, and know that omnipresence is here, moving and operating through everything and everyone and every circumstance, right here, right now, and forevermore. We release our concerns and our cares. Do what we are prompted to do in a space of clarity and peace. And know that all is unfolding perfectly. Perfectly. So hold this vision, this presence, this space, knowing that omnipresence is with you always. You are immersed in it. You can never be separate from it. Nothing is out of order. Everything is perfect. We trust that all is well, perfectly unfolding in this omnipresence. We are safe and secure in this omnipresence. And in this place of divine love, we remember the words of Emmett Fox. There is not a difficulty that enough love will not conquer. No disease that enough love will not heal. No door that enough love will not open. No gulf that enough love will not. Love is the nature of omnipresence. Love is the law of the universe. Love is the reality. Love is the answer. So as we gently bring our attention back to this moment, infused with the recognition of this indwelling presence of our divinity, and knowing that we dwell in this omnipresence and divine source, we say thank you. May we be strengthened by this truth that omnipresence is here and all is well. And so it is.
Well, thank you for those moments of centering. Everything after that's always better, isn't it? Once you turn aside from all of the story we've created, the stories we bought into, and just come back to the moment and to the truth and to the peace that's waiting for us. It's always a good way to begin anything. Well, we're going to do a little something extra this week, because you'll notice we're down a person. Our co-host, Reverend Jeff, isn't with us today. So while we're in this prayerful mood, let's just take another moment to know that he is getting the care that he needs and is responding to it. He had an unexpected experience and went to the hospital earlier this week, and still facing whatever that challenge is. I believe, usually when these things happen, is at Vanderbilt, which that's where you want to be. That's one place you want to be if you need to be getting some treatment and get better. So we know he's in good hands. And so let's just take this moment to know that right where he is, God is. No, I don't even know what his issue is. I usually don't even ask because about these things, because I want to focus on wholeness and blessings. I don't give any attention to what seems to be wrong. I want to give my attention to what I know to be true, which is God's allness and God's goodness and the infinite possibilities that exist for all of us. So would you please join me in holding Jeff in the light and remembering that divine wisdom is at work in his body and in his life right now. Please join me in a moment of sacred silence. We focus on the good. We expect the good. We allow the good. We give thanks for the good. Amen. All right. Thank you for blessing Reverend Jeff with us. Reverend Joy and I will be discussing divine science interpretation and application of traditional Christian doctrines. When we say God, we mean what other people mean. When we say atonement, when we say, and in fact, some of these words we don't say anymore, but people have questions about them, and so we have to know what they're talking about so that we can put it into our language and experience and understanding with them and for them. So we're going to be talking about some of those traditional Christian doctrines and how we understand them and speak about them in divine science. But first, let's take a quick break to hear from the network. This is Divine Science Everywhere on New Thought Media Network.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity, Kitchener. Unity Spiritual Center, Ottawa. Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center. Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey. Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
Before we get into our deeply theological discussion, we never really get very deep, as it's always fun. But before we get into our planned discussion, I want to give a little information segment. This is the sort of thing that Reverend Jeff often does, and so I thought, well, I'll just see if I can know something about somebody today. And at the Sunshine Cathedral, we have this roster of saints and spiritual heroes, mystics, gurus, whatever, every week in our newsletter and our weekly in-house newsletter. And so there's just, people that we focus on for that week. And they could be, Christian mystics, they could be Buddhists, they could be Jewish rabbis, they could be social activists, all kinds of Hindus, just everything in the world. And of course, a lot of New Thought leaders. And it just so happens that this week, one of our saints or spiritual heroes at the Sunshine Cathedral is Max Ballard. If you've been in divine science a long time, that's probably a name that sounds familiar. If you're new, maybe not so much, but you do need to know about him. Reverend Dr. Max H. Ballard was a highly respected and influential figure in divine science, ordained at a young age by Nona Brooks, one of the early pioneers, basically co-founder of divine science. He was ordained in 1941, and I believe at that time he was the youngest divine science ordinand that had ever happened up to that time. His deeply spiritual nature was evident in his teachings and writings, which he shared not only from the pulpit, but also on lecture platforms alongside other prominent metaphysical leaders like Emmett Fox. He also wrote brochures and lessons, and you can find some of those with just a Google search, even still. He also led congregations, particularly those that he founded. He founded, or pioneered, we sometimes say, divine science churches in Pueblo, Colorado, and I believe that church is still there, meeting in a beautiful building. And he also started the church in Crestwood, Missouri. And he also served the Washington, D.C. church, first as their minister and then as minister emeritus. His teaching and some take on this is what you would hear from almost any divine science minister, but his teaching emphasized that the aim of divine science was not merely to demonstrate things, but to know God. That the divine science everywhere, the understanding that God is everywhere, that there's not a spot where God is not, that God is the one source, the one substance, the one power, and we share in it and we express it, and there's just really the one life living itself through our individual lives. That's the message. Nona Brooks said, we return to our basis, and that is omnipresence. And so Max was certainly true to that. Max Ballard is one of the great teachers in divine science history, for that matter, in New Thought history. And so we've looked at one of our teachers. Now let's dive into some of our teachings. Let's discuss divine science's take on some traditional Christian doctrines. First, I guess we should start with the main thing, God. What do we mean when we say God? And I think there are either more or less atheists in the world than we think there are. If you think that God is a person separate from the rest of us, some anger issues, intervenes sometimes but not consistently, made up a lot of rules, and we have to arbitrarily follow them or suffer horrible consequences, that God is losing a lot of fans. I think that God, more and more people don't believe in that God, even people who call themselves people of faith. So if to not believe in that God makes you an atheist, I think we have a lot more than we even know. But if God is love, if God is the interconnected web of life that connects all of us, if God is all that is, and that allness is more than the sum of its parts, if God is energy and power and the one thing, the ground of all being, the ocean that we're all in and that's in all of us. Well, if that's what we mean by God, I think we have fewer atheists than we think, because we may not call that God. We may not even have any rituals around it or sacred stories about it, but we feel connected to other people. We feel connected to nature. We feel that love is a powerful force. We believe that hope, even if it doesn't yield any amazing results, that hope itself is a blessing and is better than despair. We believe in things, and some of us call that God or spirit or mind, and some of us don't. But I think that either we have, depending on your understanding of God, we either have more or less people who don't believe in God. Well, divine science is in that latter category, as is I would say everyone in New Thought. We're not serving or worshiping or cowering before a big guy. You know, the one who got here first, so he gets to be in charge. He makes up all the rules. He gets to punish you for breaking the rules. That doesn't even make any sense. That's not reasonable, especially not in the 21st century. That's just not. And if it were true, I would still reject it. Like, I wouldn't want to be part of that. That just wouldn't be okay. That's nothing I want to be part of. Being in that person's uh, gravitational pull, being in that person's universe, doesn't sound any better than whatever the alternatives could be. So that is making sense. But we do experience the sacred. We do experience something that we sometimes would call miraculous. No one else may even notice it, but our lives were changed by it. That moment was something seared into our memories. We can't forget it. We all have had those experiences. Some of us call it divine, some of us doesn't, and it doesn't care what we call it. So in divine science, we say it's all about the omnipresence. That God, that's what God is. Not an omnipresent thing, because a thing can't be omnipresent. If something is defined or limited by dimensions, it can't be everywhere. No matter how close two things to be, two pieces of paper are not one piece of paper. You know, you can't, to be omnipresent, you have to be the only presence. And that means all of these things that seem separate actually have to be part of the only thing that is. And so that's what we call omnipresence. We say there's one substance or one presence or one power or one spirit or one life. And that's what we call God. A physicist might call it something else. A poet might call it something else. A philosopher might call it something else. Fine. Pick a name, go with it, change it every other month. I don't care. But for divine science, it's not this guy that we've got to impress or placate. It's this life that we share. It's this presence that we're always communing with in deeper and deeper levels. It's this ultimate reality that we share, and it's so much more than our bodies. Which is why when these bodies are used up, when we don't need them anymore, we still think that that's not the end anymore. Than, you know, my life didn't end when I gave some clothes to the Goodwill. Those were just clothes that I didn't need anymore. But my life somehow continued past my donation to the Goodwill. I think that's what it is with bodies. That when these clothes are done, okay, we're going to donate them to the earth. But then there's something that was wearing those clothes go on, and that something is part of the one something, the only something that really is. And that's my understanding. That's my vocabulary of what we mean by omnipresent. But language is limited, so the next 10 divine scientists might describe it very differently. But I think you probably feel the energy of, we're talking about a oneness, and not something separate and judgy, but something present, and that is present itself. Unless Reverend Joy would say it 100% differently, and let's see.
I love that description of donating your clothes to Goodwill. I love that. Well, as I have served as a hospital and hospice chaplain, I do encounter people at times that are a little nervous about what's going to happen to them after they die. And there's so many belief systems out there, and someone might think that they weren't good enough, that they didn't obey God and things. So we would talk about that, or they may be a little uncomfortable, and because I was as a chaplain is saying, well, I still believe in it, but I just don't go to church. So we would have a conversation about how they connected with this source, with God, whatever they called it. And it often fell into categories of relationship with each other, with their family, with their pets, with nature. It's the awareness of this love, this connection that can't be separated. In fact, I have a special memory of one gentleman that told me that he had a lot of questions about his spirituality, but he felt that he was okay because he and his dog loved each other. And he said to me, "Did you know that dog is God spelled backwards?" And that just really meant a lot to him.
Yeah.
And to think that and I agree with him. It's that presence of love and nurturing and relationship. And even when that dog wasn't in his presence, he still felt that love, that connection. And
Mm-hmm.
that's true for us with our source. Some people have a challenge with calling God Father or Mother. Sometimes a new thought. Some people say Father, Mother
Mm-hmm.
to bring that balance there. And sometimes God is labeled as love or light, and it all distills into its omnipresence. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter, as Bishop Durrell said, God doesn't care. God doesn't have emotions and isn't emotional. It's spirit, it's energy, it's that omnipresence and wisdom. So,
Helen Zagat, we should probably do a whole show about her one time. She was another person we don't hear much about, but the one book that I know that she wrote we use in our divine science classes, but she boiled down. You know, it's all just for convenience. You can't really define anything, but she uh, said the 5 attributes of God were life, light, wisdom, substance, and power. Well, those are the 5 uh, attributes of God. So when you're talking about any one of those 5 things, we're really talking about God. If you're talking about life, you're talking about God. If you're talking about love, you're talking about God. If you're talking about wisdom, you're talking about God. And that's always uh, been meaningful to me. These attributes that we're bound to experience.
mhm,
Well, that's God,
mhm,
and or that's the power, the experience that we call God. We could call it something else. Uh, in fact, there's 2 ways of prayer that we teach, and we have the prayer treatment class, and then we have the non-theistic prayer class for people who they don't even like religious language at all, but they still they feel some attraction to prayer. Well, we can work with that because
mhm.
prayer isn't about isn't about the doctrines, and so yeah, the uh, the more we say about God, sort of the deeper the weeds we get about a thing that, we're trying to define what can't be defined. We're trying to discuss what can't be known. Uh,
Mhm.
and yet we have experienced it somehow, and we continue to feel compelled to explore it. So, but what we can all agree on, mostly in New Thought, and especially in Divine Science, is that whatever God is, it's all that is. It's
Mhm.
everywhere, fully, evenly present.
Mhm.
And if we start with that and work with that, uh, I think we can't ever really go too far wrong. You certainly are never going to get into this fear mode of God's going to be mad or God's going to reject me. God is all there is. There's nowhere for God to go away from you. There's nowhere for God to send you. Because God is the one presence. So we're not getting away from God. Now, how can we work with that knowledge to have more peace, more joy, more hope, bring some blessings to the world?
And it's also the attributes that, as you said, that you associate God or the divine with. So even though you're in this omnipresence, if you want to be sure that you're focused on one of those positive attributes of God, so there it dissolves any sense of fear or separation there. Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's the Course in Miracles, and I know that's not divine science, except it is. Everything is, everything is everything. Truth is truth, but I think it's Course in Miracles that says that the only real thing is love,
Mhm.
and the only thing that seems opposite to love is fear. So
Mhm.
so it's all either love or fear, and fear is a lie. And
Yes.
so that just leaves love. And if you think, well, no, what I have is anxiety, what I have is hatred, what I have is, that's all rooted in fear. I don't hate you unless I'm afraid you can hurt me.
Yeah.
I'm not anxious unless I'm afraid I don't know what I'm doing, or that everything's spinning out of control, and I'm helpless or hopeless. Everything boils down to fear.
Mhm.
If it's not love, and love is the cure for fear. Love casts out fear.
That's
Uh,
right.
so that's I get that language from A Course in Miracles, but that is 100% in compliance with divine science teaching and thinking.
That's right. That's right. And another definition of fear is false evidence appearing real.
You know,
Yes. Um,
Zig Ziglar used to say, fear can be either forget everything and run, or face everything and rise. And
cool. Cool.
it's all about whatever I'm afraid of. And there are even studies that says, even on a secular way of looking at things, that over 80% of the things we are afraid of, we don't need to be afraid of. They've
Mhm.
already happened, and
Yes.
we survived. So what are we afraid of? Or they haven't happened yet, so this moment is safe, even if it all goes to hell tomorrow. Or it's never going to happen. We've built it up in our mind worse than it ever could be.
Sure.
So, and that's over 80% of everything we're afraid of, and that has nothing to do with religion.
Right.
So, fear is often, maybe almost always, false evidence appearing real.
That's right. I'd like to say that our colleague, Reverend Jeff Radcliffe, just sent a chat message.
Okay.
And he said, Tesla said, we need to understand the universe by thinking of energy and vibration. Einstein taught that energy can't be created or destroyed, only transformed. Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning, God. It doesn't say God and something else. It's all God. Yeah.
The One
Thank
of the rabbinic interpretations of that creation myth uh, is that when when God looked at everything and said it was good, or when God said that they were making everything in their image, let's make Adam,
you.
the earth being in our image. That because God had already created everything before that, uh, that God was talking to the rest of God's creation, and so that there's the deer and the birds and the trees and the dirt and the all this, and then there's just their source, God, that's made all of these things from God's self, because in the beginning, God, what's God going to work with? God's all God has, so everything comes as part of God, and so God is talking to the rest of God's creation. Let's make humans in our image. So like a plant, like an animal, like a God, that humans are all of it. That we are human and divine, and Jesus, of course, is the archetype for that. But that
Mhm.
rabbis aren't talking about Jesus, of course, but that was one of the hour is basically saying that we're part of everything, because everything is one thing, and that's God.
Mhm. Lovely. Lovely.
So, well, okay, God got some play. We're taking these topics, and there are even some more from Chapter 9 of Divine Science. It's Practice and Principles, and for a lot of us, that was our primary text. Now,
Mhm.
some people these days, they use Melinda Kramer's Divine Science and Healing,
Mhm.
uh, and for people who are transferring in already have a lot of New Thought stuff. I just sometimes give them a list of books, and they can just go through all of them. But for a lot of us, this was our introductory text. This was our primer, as it were. And so we've been taking these topics from Chapter 9 of
Mhm.
that book, talking about these doctrines. And so, following God in that. And if you don't have that book, by the way, do get it. If you can't
So
find it
we all
on,
about Divine Science Federation.
yes,
Yes.
yes, you can. Yeah, if you can't find it on like Amazon, or there are some PDF versions out in the world on that you can read. Sometimes those are difficult because you have to scroll, like you get 3 inches, and then 3 lines, and you have to go to the next page 3 lines. But it's free. But we also do have hard copies at Divine Science Federation, and you can order one, have one mailed to you. Just email kevin@sunshinecathedral.org. So after God, though, there's three, and they're all sort of parts of the same thing, really. And that's sonship, Jesus, and Christ.
Mhm.
Those are the next sort of three topics: the sonship, Jesus, and Christ. And if you were Catholic, or Pentecostal, or Mormon or whatever, you might think those were all the same thing. In New Thought, and in particular divine science, those aren't talking about a person necessarily.
Mhm.
The sonship, uh, even though that's a gender-specific term, means everybody. That Jesus isn't the Son of God. Jesus is the archetype of what a child of God looks like, and that's all of us. One of the things is that Jesus is the great example, not the great exception. And so the Jesus that we see may even be fluffed up a little bit, might be slightly allegorized or aggrandized, but even if this is a mythical version, that story that we have of him is the ideal that we're to aspire to. And even if it is mythologized, it's still based on something that was so great people felt the need to mythologize it. So that's not in any way degrading anything. But this Jesus that touches the untouchable, and that loves the unloved, and that heals people without asking them for anything in return, that this is what the Son and Daughter of God does. This is what the Son of God, Daughter of God looks like. So that Jesus isn't about that Jesus. That Jesus is about what a child of God is meant to be, and that's all of us. So if we're not as loving as we're meant to be, we have this Jesus model to say, okay, let's get more like that. So the Son isn't Jesus. Jesus is the example of what the sons and daughters of God really are. And so if we're not expressing that yet, it's in us. We just need to now let that out a little bit more. So when we're talking about the sonship now, and also to be frank, that's not a word I use anymore. So that's not, I'm saying this because it's in the book. It may be a word that, you've heard me, something you wouldn't hear me talking about the sonship. But you still might have a question about it. And that is how I would answer that question, is that the Son in the stories is a model of for what all of us are meant to be and can be, and in our deepest levels really are. Now, Jesus then, the historical Jesus was a person, had a mother named Mary, as far as we know, was born, and seems to have had a prophetic ministry that got him in trouble with authorities. He was eventually executed for sedition, and his friends said that somehow that wasn't the end of his story. So the sonship is all of us. Jesus is Jesus. That is a historical character who made such an imprint on history. We're still talking about him. Now, but then what is the Christ? Ernest Holmes, I know that's religious science, but he was ordained divine science. And his brother was always divine science. Ernest Holmes said very clearly that Christ is a principle, not a person. So Jesus, the Christ means anointed. So Jesus, and anointed in our context is sort of similar to what the Buddhists would call awakened or enlightened. So Jesus, anointed with awareness, anointed with the realization that he was a son of God. That anointing, that consciousness, that awareness, that principle is the Christ. We might say the Christ principle. In Buddhism, they would call it the Buddha nature. And in Buddhism, they would say that nature, it's in there. It's the pearl buried in all of us. It's the truth of all of us. And so the spiritual path is about finding it and letting it express itself. The Buddha nature is our real nature. And I would say the Christ nature is our real nature. The Christ nature is what it looks like when you're living out the sonship. And Jesus is the historical person who showed us what that looks like and how to get there. How do you do that? You love your neighbor. You welcome the stranger. You heal people unconditionally. You feed people who are hungry. You work for justice. So Jesus, the sonship and Jesus Christ are all connected. They are all from the same story. But Jesus is Jesus. Sonship is what we all share. Jesus shows us what that looks like, and Christ is the true nature that makes all that possible. When we're looking like Jesus, when we're living like the sons and daughters of God, that's Christ in us being made manifest.
Hmm.
That's how I think I would say those things. Reverend Joy
Yes,
could say it less wordy. I get wordy sometimes, but maybe she could say it more succinctly, where it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense finally.
maybe.
Maybe.
Well, I appreciate that, and to remember that Jesus didn't have a special power. He had the same power and the same essence within him as us. And he was just awakened. And it's interesting that there aren't stories about his early life,
Mm-hmm.
or there's a gap. Well, maybe that was his awakening period,
Mm-hmm.
and he had to learn. Um, and part of his teaching that's attributed to him in the scripture is, the works that I do shall you do also, and greater works you shall do. And Paul said, Christ in you, the hope of glory, in Colossians 1:27. So it's one thing that really moved me when I was studying, that to remember the realization that Christ was not Jesus' last name. It's the impersonal, spiritual idea of man. And Jesus became Christ Jesus by recognition of the embodiment and the expression of his divine identity. It's interesting because years ago, um, there were two ladies that came to my door that were Jehovah Witnesses. And I knew that I was not going to change my
Mm-hmm.
belief system, and yet I wanted to learn from them. And so they came for several weeks, and I learned a lot and really respected where they were coming from. And one thing that also hit home was they called Jesus Christ Jesus. So we have that similarity.
Mm-hmm.
In so many ways, we have differences, and that's true in our life. There is a commonality. It's that Christhood, that divinity, that precious presence that we dwell in and
Mm-hmm.
can't never slip out of it except in our minds.
Right.
Our minds.
In John's gospel is where you have all those I am statements,
Yes.
and I am, of course, one of the biblical names for the divine. And in John's Jesus, the way John imagines him, whenever Jesus is saying I am, it's never followed by anything negative or scary or deprecatory. It's always, I am light, I am the vine, I am the good shepherd, I am the gate, that you can, get through. It's always, I am something powerful, or I'm something good, or I'm something beautiful. And I think that's a good lesson, that the Christ in us knows what its I amness is. The Christ in us knows that it is the divine nature. It is the God in us. And so we should be careful about our I ams,
Yes.
because we're using the very power of God's name to manifest something. And so we don't want that something to be something that really we don't want.
Mhm.
So whenever you say, oh, I'm so, silly or so dumb or whatever, don't quit that. Cancel, because I am couldn't be anything other than perfect.
That's right.
And so don't throw shade at God by saying I am anything other than perfect. And that's a new thought perspective that caught me early on.
Mhm.
I am. Who shall I say sent me? Moses asked, and the answer is I am. Say that I am. Well, that's the goodness, the innate goodness in us, and that's what we're meant to identify with. That's what I am. After that, one of the things that chapter 9 talks about is atonement. I think we can skip by that one pretty easily. It's just really at-one-ment.
Yes.
Atonement isn't something that we have to do, or that someone had to do for us to bridge a gap. Atonement is a realization that there is no gap. Because if there's one power, there's just one power. If there's one presence, where's the gap? There can be no gap in omnipresence, because if there was a gap, then there would be no presence in that gap, and that's not omnipresence. So atonement isn't fixing brokenness. Atonement is the awareness of wholeness. There was no brokenness, except, as Reverend Joy said, in our mind. So when you read or hear atonement, just change it in your head to at one-ment, because that's what those old doctrines are trying to get you to anyway. And we just say we're already there. And so we just take out the middle step and get right to our oneness and our wholeness.
And the important thing is to know that you know that you know you're at one-ment.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that's the thing is I don't really have to learn that again, but I do have to remember that. I have to remember that I know. I've already learned it, but I often have to remember that I learned it, because that's what happens, is that you forget. But once you've reclaimed it a time or two, it gets easier to say, oh yeah, I know better than this. The Immaculate Conception, this one bothers me a lot because it's wrong. But I don't know why it's wrong, because this part was written by Fanny James. The book that we're talking about, Divine Science, it's Practice and Principles. The College of Divine Science in Denver put this together as a book. But what they did was they took, a chapter or an article or something that Melinda Kramer wrote, and that's the beginning. And then the rest of it is from Fanny James's book, Truth and Health. And then they smushed it together and make this book. And it's a great book. And I love Fanny James. In fact, I think of her as the systematic theologian of divine science. I love her. But she got this wrong. And I know why she got it wrong, because she's Presbyterian. Before she was divine science, she was Presbyterian. And Protestants often misunderstand this. The Immaculate Conception is a Roman Catholic doctrine that says Mary was born without sin. And because she was born without sin, she's now worthy to be the mother of Christ. So, and then she, without a male companion in the story, I don't believe that literally, but in any case, that without male companion, she has a baby, Jesus, and that is her conception. That's what we call the virgin birth or the virginal conception. So the Immaculate Conception is that Mary was born without sin. Everyone else is born with sin, but she's born without sin. That makes her worthy to be the person that has the virgin birth. And so the Immaculate Conception is a doctrine about Mary. Protestants hear Immaculate Conception, they think that means virgin birth, and they use it interchangeably. And that's what Melinda has done. When she talks about Immaculate Conception, she's talking about the virgin birth. Now, what she says about the virgin birth, of course, is right. Like from then on, it's all perfect. But she's misusing a Catholic concept, and then trying to new thoughtify something else. So I know it's pedantic. I know it's like weird, who cares? But it torments me somehow that this is just the wrong phrase. And the Immaculate Conception to me is no big deal, because none of us are born. Who's born with sin? Nobody's born with sin. So it's not even a big deal that she was born without sin, because who ain't? But it's talking about the virgin birth. And then, of course, what she does is she talks about the what that means metaphysically. You don't have to believe that that biology was somehow bypassed. You don't have to believe that that birth itself isn't enough of a miracle. You don't have to take the myth literally, but I don't, and I think probably a lot of us don't. But I do get a little just hung up about the wrong use of the words there. But anyway, Joy can probably even better explain to you what she means when she's giving a metaphysical definition of the virgin birth. I just want to make sure everybody knows that at this section, that's really what we're talking about, is the virgin birth.
Well, we're all born innocent.
Yeah.
And so Mary just represents that. And years ago, I remember that there was a couple that asked me to baptize their two children, and they explained to me that they'd had a stillbirth, and they got married when the mother was pregnant. So their minister refused to come and baptize that baby that had died. And so they were really, really upset. So they wanted to make sure the others got baptized. And we actually had a really good conversation. And the mother was so right. She said, I stood up to that man that said that. She said, how can you judge this innocent baby for nothing. He did nothing.
Yeah.
And so that's it. How can we judge ourselves?
Yeah.
That we're born innocent, every one of us. Yes.
I would have baptized the baby's lifeless body, because ritual is for us. God doesn't need any of it.
That's right.
Because if God is everything, God doesn't need anything. But if somebody needs something to help their broken heart start to mend, if somebody needs something to get through that day, I'll try to do it. I'll baptize your dog. I'll baptize your house. I don't care. I mean, because it's not for God. It's for you.
Yes.
And if I can say some words or do a thing that will make some of the pain more bearable, at least in that moment, why wouldn't I?
I agree. Mm-hmm.
So,
coming from that space of non-judgment, coming to provide unconditional love, and helping them to recognize their at-one-ment.
Exactly. Well, you know what? Chapter 9 has more things, but what we don't have is more time. So that's good. See, Divine Science is rich. You get going on it, and you never have enough time. So we'll pick up the rest of that chapter in the future, or not. Who knows? But we have guests coming up and topics coming up. We'll never run out of stuff to talk about. Divine Science is very, very rich. And before we wrap up entirely, though, I think Reverend Joy wants to take us into a break.
Yes.
New Thought Media Network is excited to present Divine Science Everywhere, Fridays at 2 p.m. Mountain Time and 4 p.m. Eastern. Come explore a modern experience of divine science with Reverend Joy Fletcher, Reverend Jeff Radcliffe, and Bishop Durrell Watkins. Join us as we open our eyes to divine science everywhere we look. Fridays on New Thought Media Network.
We jumped the gun a little bit there. We're meant to get this in, and we didn't get it in, so we have to get this in, even though it's also in the clip. This is Divine Science Everywhere here on the New Thought Media Network. All right, now we got it in. Now we're good. We won't get in trouble now.
Yeah. Reverend Jeff Radcliffe said that there is no such thing as original sin. We were born in original blessing. So
yes.
That.
How could sin be original? How could sin be our origins? That doesn't make sense.
So we're excited because next week our guest is Reverend Linda Martella Whitsett, who was the director of Silent Unity and author of 4 books, and I believe she's won some awards for some of those books. And the following week is Reverend Dr. John Waterhouse will be joining us. So we have lots of great things, and we're so grateful that you joined us today. And maybe you'd like to share this replay on YouTube with your family and friends, and just share the good news with them.
Yes.
So thank you, Bishop Durrell and Reverend Jeff, and also Reverend Dr. Bishop Robert Griffin, that's helping us in the sound booth. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate you.
That's my husband. That's my husband, by the way.
Yeah. And until we meet again, remember that divine science everywhere means God in all, through all, as all. Until next time, divine science everywhere here on New Thought Media Network. Bye.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center, Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.